What's going on, guys? It's your motivation guy. So our Radiant coaches feel like the weapon meta has shifted since our last gun tier list, so we decided to give it a quick refresher. So it is so important to stay up to date with the meta because no matter what else happens in Valorant, like having the right weapon in the right situation, it's gonna help you win more games. But this is just our coaches' opinion. So comment down, what your favorite weapons are and why you love to use them so much. All right, you guys ready to do this? Let's get this going.
The S tier will be comprised of the very best in slot weapons. Okay, so these are the guns that you should find yourself buying the most when you're presented with the opportunity. These are the types of weapons that you need to find yourself using the most or saving credits to purchase. The Vandal has slowly become the new favorite rifle among the top tier players. Its one-shot potential at all ranges, nerfs to overall rifle movement, direct buffs and indirect buffs has pushed it over the top of the Phantom in my opinion. So to get the most out of this weapon, make sure to not only rely on spraying this weapon, as it's just harder and really defeats the purpose of the gun. Try and utilize tap and burst shots and medium range outside of the 15 meters one-shot distance when possible. And so that being said, guys, the Phantom is still a great weapon that we personally, use more often. But now that the Vandal is no longer in the shadow of the Phantom, it's just a better weapon if you're able to have a steadier shot and play around its strengths and weaknesses.
All right, guys, so before we continue, we got a question of the day. All right, so what agent type do you guys want or expect next? And you better not say a duelist. So in a previous video, we asked if your rank actively reflected your skill. And Zyphon said, I just feel like I can't rank up. I think I should be bronze, silver, but I'm just stuck in iron. If you got rank rating from KDA rather than win-loss, it would mean less bots in Radiant and less Radiance in Iron. So thanks for the response, Zyphon. Best of luck to you, man, and improving your win-loss record. Remember, guys, we got coaches that can help with that. Anyways, let's get back to the video.
Alright guys, so the Operator still reigns supreme as the best and slot weapon when you have credits to spare. So this is especially the case on the defender side as you have much easier access to angles that you can safely hold. Additionally, there are still agents in the game that can hold angles with the Operator that are normally unsafe. Agents like Jet are a core reason the Operator is so strong in the current meta. Her ability to become nearly untradeable with her dash is what is largely keeping this weapon in the S tier. And so if you're using the Operator on different agents, you should reconsider it and definitely pick Jet instead. On top of her dash, Jet's updraft allows her to use the Operator in a vertical sense, allowing for potential possibilities that players wouldn't usually have to consider. In the right hands, the Operator is the scariest weapon in the game, and for good reason. The Operator's one-shot potential simply cannot be matched yet. You can still get value out of it on other agents, but you won't be able to do the same thing Jet does, which makes, you easier to kill and easier to read. For 5,000 credits, definitely make sure that you're trying to look for early advantages with this weapon by making educated guesses where the enemies might go. Alright, so for the longest time, the Phantom has been the clear winner in the Phantom versus Vandal debate. However, the sentiment has changed as more pro players have opted to use the Vandal over the Phantom. And this phenomenon isn't just isolated to NA. Other regions like EU and Asia have also mirrored this change in preference. With that being said, we still prefer the Phantom, especially on certain maps or, when you're just playing on the defensive side. So the bigger magazine, no tracers, the faster rate of fire makes mowing down multiple enemies that are flooding into an area just much easier. And so you also don't have the same fear of just shooting through smokes as there are just no visible tracers with the Phantom. If your shot isn't feeling on point, look no further as the Phantom is still king at everything else. Not hitting your crisp headshots? Alright, take a step back and go with the trusty old Phantom. Alright, so the Odin, without a doubt, is the most underrated weapon in the S tier in my opinion. Like, extremely high fire rate and bullet penetration allows you to wallbang spots that aren't typically feasible. And so this is especially great if you couple it with agents that can obtain easy information like Sova, Cypher, and Sky. Maps like Haven and Ascent have great wallbang potential with the ability to hold down key areas with relative ease. And don't sleep on its dueling potential either, because it has a faster time to kill than the rifles once you master the spray pattern. And so our tip to you guys is to ADS and crouch with this weapon as it just greatly increases its effectiveness. And overall, man, it's an extremely powerful weapon. And so think of it as like a Phantom with a higher magazine, rate of fire and penetration. Alright, so for a while, the Stinger was actually the go-to choice over the Spectre when purchasing light, but still trying to do some, serious damage to the enemy team. For 1,000 credits at the time and a faster time, to kill at closer ranges, it was the highest value weapon for a while. players in high rank were abusing it, just like they've been abusing the Bucky ever since its nerf in this patch. And so with both those weapons taking major hits, the Spectre is clearly back at the top. For 1600 credits, there aren't many weapons that can pack the same punch as the Spectre does, but keep in mind, the running accuracy of submachine guns hasn't been touched yet, so make sure that you're running and shooting with this gun at close range engagements. Alright, so the Frenzy took over the pistol meta in a huge way. Like, once you master its spray control, it's really a no-brainer. And so with its superb running accuracy and fully automatic capability, it just feels like a mini SMG on pistol round. And so if you weren't running with the Frenzy, you were missing out on kills that were otherwise just much harder to find with the Classic and Ghost. However, with Valorant's recent patch, the Frenzy got a credit increase from 400 to 500. So, what does this mean for the Frenzy meta? Well, you may have missed the boat to abuse this weapon, all day long, but the Frenzy is still exactly the same stat-wise. It still thrives, at finding 1 or 2 kills in pistol rounds better than the other pistols. However, I will say this, the increase from 400 to 500 credits has limited its use cases for certain agents and won't really allow you to run with the Frenzy with light shields on those pistol rounds. Agents that didn't need to buy their utility would just run around with shields and a Frenzy blasting their opponents away. And so without this option, you're going to mainly want to use this pistol if you like to play close range and your agent doesn't happen to have very important utility they need to buy. Agents like Cypher and Breach, Sky, Killjoy, Omen, Brimstone are usually going to get more value with the Classic and their abilities than, getting that Frenzy or even Ghost purchase. However, agents like Jet, Raze, Reyna, Phoenix, and Sova are all very capable of utilizing the Frenzy as their primary utility. It's either cheap or free. Overall, it largely depends on, if you like the Frenzy and if it really just fits your playstyle. But, it's still a crazy good weapon, and it definitely is going to keep its place in the meta unless some real nerfs hit it in the future. The A tier is devoted to the weapons that may be just as strong as the weapons in the S tier. However, they're just more situational and aren't always the best in every circumstance. And these can sometimes even be stronger, but knowing their strengths can definitely be imperative in understanding when to use them. At 2100 credits, the Bulldog is a strong contender. Against the Vandal and Phantom, however, it has some clear drawbacks. It has a slower rate of fire and smaller magazine size like the Vandal, but its time to kill and damage is just much lower and is definitely just more in line with the Phantoms. To best utilize this weapon, guys, try and utilize its burst mode at range to catch players off guard. Otherwise, this weapon is just largely overshadowed by the Spectre as the king of half-buys right now. The Sheriff is the king of precision in the right hands. At 800 credits, it offers the potential to just one-shot fully shielded targets at a close medium distance. Having a strong understanding of trigger discipline is key with the Sheriff, as spamming its shots will not end up pretty. So to put it simply, guys, the Sheriff is like a sniper pistol, so look to hold down more angles and stop swinging and spamming, like it's just like the Wild West. Once you find the rhythm of the Sheriff, you can be able to find accurate shots that can either one shot to the head or 3 shots to the body. It's quite really good, for 800 credits, and it's just much stronger due to the nerfs to its competition of the Stinger and Bucky. The Ghost has been a staple weapon since the beginning of beta. Not only is it usually the superior weapon on pistol rounds, but it's also a great weapon to save when you do win the initial pistol round. Its immense 15-round magazine, higher rate of fire, and extremely low cost allows you to even win straight duels against full buys. Unlike the Classic and Frenzy, it can be played at longer ranges, and its just damage fall off is definitely much lower. You probably ought to find yourself purchasing a Ghost and light shields over the Sheriff for eco rounds, if your shot isn't feeling super solid. The Ghost is such a great weapon at 500 credits, and it's definitely really hard to beat. Alright guys, so just like the Odin, the Ares is just largely slept on, man. Its bigger magazine and longer range capabilities let you play at ranges that something like the Spectre simply can't. And although the Ares doesn't exceed particularly at any range, its high magazine and bullet penetration are a great alternative if you're playing agents like Sova that can better utilize this weapon. And so overall, guys, it's an amazing weapon, especially when taking medium range engagements. And so if you like playing more passive agents like Sentinels or Controllers, the Ares can definitely be a great eco round buy. Otherwise, the Spectre is the go-to weapon at 1600 credits due to its close range lethal and flexibility to running spray. Alright guys, so the B tier is filled with very strong weapons, but due to their higher skill ceiling or credit difference, it puts them slightly under the A tier. And these are mainly situationally good, but don't let the B tier persuade you to think that these are just bad weapons by any means. At 0 credits, there is no other weapon that can compete at this price range. It is still ridiculously strong for what it is, even with the countless right-click nerfs it's received. In many situations, we found it to be just much more useful at finishing off targets when your primary weapon of choice runs out of ammo over the likes of a sheriff, for example. Like, it's so important to note that it's no longer the right-click turn-off brain machine it used to be. Especially on pistol rounds, you're gonna wanna treat it more like the ghost unless you're in a comfortable range to right-click. This is because the right-click spread is just much larger, so you must be closer to hit multiple shots with the right-click now. But regardless, this weapon is fairly balanced now, but it's still a solid weapon when used correctly. Nonetheless, you really can't really go wrong with the classic, as a trusty secondary. For 0 credits, it's still a lot stronger than you might think. Unfortunately, the days of forcing every round with the Stinger is no longer. It isn't a terrible gun, but it's definitely in line with what it should act like. Now, at 1100 credits, the Stinger has a very difficult time making the same kills happen. The change to the recoil pattern at bullet number 3 instead of bullet number 6 makes the spray pattern almost unusable at longer ranges. Okay, so if you're fighting at extremely close ranges, this Stinger can still be quite viable, but players can easily just keep their distance now without the same fear of being shredded to pieces by a running and gunning 1000 credit weapon. You're going to want to go with the weaponry like the Spectre, Sheriff, Frenzy, and Ares over the Stinger right now, but it still has potential uses. Alright, so a lot of people may be surprised by the Bucky being in the B tier, okay? Although, it got some very sizable nerfs in 2.06, it's still very deadly at close range, and it still functions like a shotgun and less like a sniper rifle. And so if you use it at tight ranges, the left click is a lot stronger than before, and it can still one-shot in the less than 10 meters range. Still a very big nerf, but with the price still at 900, you can still get these, cheesy kills in, but it's not gonna be obnoxious like before. On certain maps though, the weapon can be C or F tier, so definitely keep that in mind. And so the days of the Bucky meta are now over, so I wonder what new weapon that people are gonna start to abuse. So the Judge is basically a semi-automatic Bucky. Like, even with the nerf to the Bucky, the Judge is a hard option to choose due to its higher price. However, I will say this, if that doesn't bother you, the Judge may actually be stronger than the Bucky, especially if you're trying to just mow down multiple enemies in a short time frame. No changes have been made to the Judge since its several, previous nerfs, but I still think it's not the greatest weapon. On paper, it's not a terrible weapon. High bullet penetration and one-shot headshots potential at all ranges makes it seem very appealing. However, at 2500, it's just hard to justify such a specialized weapon. Most will either decide to save their credits and light buy with some of the weapons in S or A tier, or they're just going to save up to purchase Phantom, Vandal, Odin operators. Although it's actually quite strong, its cost puts it in a strange position. Its low fire rate, single shot only capabilities force the Guardian to take engagement ranges at medium to long range. And this is where the Phantom, Vandal, and Operator all shine. And so to us, the Guardian feels like an even less forgiving Vandal, as if you miss the initial headshot, you're in a very tough spot. And so with its low fire rate and low magazine, trying to penetrate through walls can even put you in tough positions and out of ammo. Overall, its price range of 2500 is just too expensive, and it's just too situational to really use effectively. And I think it's just better off to buy a Vandal with half armor if your money is tight, or the plethora of light buy options we talked about already. Okay, so for 200 credits, the Shorty used to be the king of value. Like, its one-shot potential at close range has been severely turned back, and it's just much harder to find those opportunities anymore. Now, you pretty much need to barrel stuff your opponent to, really secure a one-shot kill. More often than not, you're gonna end up hitting your opponents with this gun for 60 to 120 damage, and, be met with an untimely death. It doesn't really hurt to buy the Shorty when money is tight, but you think you might be able to secure a super close range kill. And so I would never buy this weapon on the attacker's side, but it could still be useful in the hyper-specific scenarios as a defender. Alright, so I think the most obvious F tier of them all is the Marshal. And I want to mention that this weapon is by no means terrible, it's just not something that can really compete with the rest of the weapon cast. Not only does it completely fall off against enemies with armor, it's also a single shot weapon, which makes it a higher skill ceiling to use. And so if there's one reason to purchase this, it's right after winning pistol rounds. The Marshal is the king of killing enemies with no shield. Again, the main issue here is that the Marshal, isn't too great against the full buy rifles in the following round unless you land a precise headshot. The Marshal feels like a money sink, as you could just potentially win those rounds against full buys much easier with the likes of Spectre, Ares, or even Bulldog.
So there weren't too many significant weapon changes in this 2.06 patch, except for the Bucky nerfs, but despite that, the weapon meta has shifted a lot since our last gun tier list. And so with plenty of weapons being nerfed over the past months, there's just less viable weapons. But overall, we think that the meta is in a much healthier spot. Hey, if you guys liked the video, subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to connect with my Instagram, you can connect with me on Your Motivation Guy. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.